The morning sun hadn't yet burned the dew off the sidewalks when Dennis Crowley made his first mistake. He marched up our driveway with a clipboard in one hand and a walkie-talkie clipped to his belt like he fancied himself the sheriff of Pine Hollow Estates. His cheap aviators reflected the gleam of our black Jeep Wrangler, parked, scandalously, at the curb. I heard the knock from the kitchen. Sharp, repetitive, aggressive. The kind of knock that thinks it owns the door it's banging on. Eva opened it. She stood in the threshold, sweat glistening on her arms from her pre-dawn workout. Her hair was pulled tight in a no-nonsense bun, and her gray tank top did little to hide the lean strength underneath. A week ago, she'd returned from her final Delta Force assignment. 11 months in hostile terrain. You don't come back from that soft. Dennis didn't blink. He stepped forward like he was about to deliver a verdict. You can't park on the street overnight, he said. HOA Code 14.3. Vehicles must be in the driveway or garage by 11 p.m. Eva looked at him. Not a stare, just a pause. Calculating. Quiet. It was parked at 11:02, she replied. I had groceries in the back. I chose not to block the sidewalk. A violation's a violation, Dennis said, tapping the clipboard. That's a $100 fine and a written warning. You keep files on people? She asked. I observe patterns, he said, voice tightening. This is a neighborhood, not a combat zone. We expect order. She didn't respond. She simply stepped back and closed the door, not slamming it, not hurried, just done. From the window, I watched Dennis linger a moment, his jaw tight, then scribble something on his clipboard and stomp away. Eva didn't speak for a long time. That guy's on a power trip, I said finally. No, she replied. That guy's looking for a fight. I should have taken that as a warning. Over the next week, Dennis made himself known. Lawn inspections, mailbox measurements, even a formal complaint about our Halloween decorations, which, for the record, hadn't changed in 3 years. He wasn't enforcing rules. He was building a case. Eva, though, didn't flinch. She moved through the days with quiet efficiency. Morning workouts in the driveway. Calm responses to every notice. She never raised her voice. Never bit back. It was unnerving how composed she stayed. I asked her once why she didn't retaliate. Because he's expecting it, she said. Bullies want escalation. They want to feel justified. So what do? We wait. But Dennis wasn't patient. He didn't want order. He wanted obedience. And he had a problem with Eva's posture, her silence, her refusal to acknowledge his authority. On Friday morning, while I was at work, he made his second mistake. According to the doorbell cam, Eva was loading groceries from the Jeep. She wore aviators and earbuds. Dennis approached from the sidewalk, shouting, but she didn't hear him, at least not at first. He stepped into our driveway, waving his arms. She turned. He pointed, yelled something unintelligible. Then, unbelievably, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a handgun. It wasn't some prop or pepper spray. It was a compact Glock, trembling in his hand. He leveled it toward her, barking orders like this was a hostage negotiation. And that's when she moved. In 5 seconds, maybe less, she closed the distance, twisted his wrist, dropped the gun, and planted him face down on the concrete. Her knee pressed between his shoulder blades, calm as sunrise. She called 911, stayed with him until the police arrived. They arrested him on the spot. Illegal weapon discharge, criminal intimidation. He was still screaming about HOA codes when they dragged him to the cruiser. Eva watched in silence, then went back to unloading groceries. When I got home, she handed me the police report like it was a grocery receipt. I didn't want it to get this far, she said, but now it has. She walked into the kitchen, leaving me with the growing realization that Dennis Crowley hadn't just tangled with the wrong homeowner. He'd declared war on the one woman in the neighborhood built for battle. Dennis Crowley didn't disappear after the arrest. He posted bail within 24 hours and came slinking back into the neighborhood like a wet cat, eyes darting, ego bruised but not broken. His hand was bandaged, and he walked with a limp that hadn't existed before. I'd have felt bad if he hadn't pulled a gun on my wife. The HOA board, rather than distancing themselves, closed ranks. No public statement. No apology. Just a cold, impersonal notice sent to every mailbox. The HOA board does not comment on active investigations involving residents. We ask all homeowners to remain respectful and cooperative with community rules. Cooperative. That word did a lot of heavy lifting. Within a week, the retaliation began. First came the anonymous complaints. Our trash bins were visible for too long after collection day. Then a letter citing excessive noise before 7 a.m. during Eva's workouts. By the third notice, I was convinced this wasn't about rules. It was war by paper. Eva read each letter once, then filed it away without a word. But I could see it wearing on her. She'd faced worse in foreign deserts, but there's a unique kind of madness in being harassed inside your own home. I wanted to fight back. I drafted emails, called lawyers, recorded everything. But Eva wouldn't bite. They're not afraid of paperwork, she said. They're afraid of being exposed. Dennis, meanwhile, had reinvented himself as a victim. He walked the streets with a sling, limping dramatically, occasionally stopping neighbors with some variation of, she snapped. I feared for my life. You never really know people. Some believed him. Others didn't. Most stayed quiet. Cowards often do. But what made my blood boil wasn't Dennis. It was the board. A week after the incident, we received a certified letter marked urgent. It was an official notice of HOA disciplinary action. It claimed Eva had used excessive force during a civil disagreement and that her behavior was incompatible with the values of Pine Hollow Estates. As punishment, our voting privileges were suspended, and we were issued a final warning before legal mediation. Legal mediation for disarming a man who aimed a loaded weapon at her in broad daylight. I paced our kitchen for 20 minutes, rage simmering behind my teeth. We fight, I said finally. Lawsuit. Restraining order. Let's bring it all. Eva didn't answer. She was seated at the dining table, staring at the letter. Her fingers tapped slowly against the wood, calculating. They're not stupid, she said quietly. They're strategic. This isn't about Dennis anymore. It's about control. They saw him fail, and now they're afraid of what I represent. And what's that? I asked. Someone who doesn't flinch. She stood, walked to the hallway, and opened a storage closet. Inside was a long-forgotten filing box, military-issue gray, heavy with her old field notes, classified briefings, and mission records. She set it on the table and started pulling files. What are you doing? I asked. Building a case, she said. They want war by policy? Fine. I've studied regimes more corrupt than this. The trick is to let them feel invincible, right before the floor caves in. The next morning, Eva visited City Hall. She pulled property records, utility complaints, public funding disclosures, anything that might connect the HOA board to improper behavior. Then she called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, a former JAG officer who owed her a favor and didn't mind going scorched earth on people drunk with authority. Over the following days, Eva collected footage from neighbors. Doorbell cams. Phone recordings. One video showed Dennis shouting at a teen for rollerblading past his house. Another caught a board member openly admitting that the HOA had to make an example of us. The picture was getting clearer. Dennis was the muscle, but the rot ran deeper. Eva stayed quiet through it all. Focused. Disciplined. Tactical. But that changed the day we found a flyer taped to our front door. It was a photoshopped image. Eva's face imposed on some caricatured domestic terrorist poster, complete with fake military jargon and slanderous claims. No name, no signature. Just fear in ink. I pulled it down, shaking with fury. That's it. We call the press. We blow this wide open. Eva looked at the flyer. Something in her expression shifted, like a steel door closing behind her eyes. No, she said calmly. We don't go to them. She tapped the stack of evidence, now sitting like a small fortress on the dining table. They're going to come to us. Eva's war room wasn't filled with weapons. It was filled with paper. Stacks of printed emails. Copies of HOA bylaws. Affidavits signed by neighbors. Every document was annotated with surgical precision, each note a pressure point waiting to be exploited. She didn't speak in hypotheticals anymore. Every move was deliberate, strategic. She wasn't reacting. She was preparing to strike. By now, our case file against the HOA was 4 inches thick. It included audio of Dennis threatening a veteran for flying a non-regulation flag, video of board members joking about making examples out of certain families. One email exchange, accidentally forwarded to the wrong neighbor, revealed that Dennis had been acting under direct instruction from the HOA vice president. Eva flagged it with a red pen and 2 words, structural liability. She moved like she was behind enemy lines again, quiet, focused, dangerous. I watched as her lawyer, Captain Harper, arrived one afternoon in a black SUV. He was tall, silver-haired, and efficient, dressed like a man who'd buried more than one corrupt official in litigation. He reviewed the files silently, then looked up at Eva.
"This is good," he said.
"You've got them nailed on intimidation, harassment, libel, and misuse of authority. I can build a civil suit that'll make them wish they'd taken up gardening instead." "Don't go easy on them," Eva said. He nodded once. "I wasn't planning to." Word spread quickly. We didn't say anything publicly, but neighbors began whispering. Some approached Eva at the mailbox. Quietly, carefully. "You're not the only ones they've targeted," one woman said, eyes darting toward a security camera. "They fined me for having a storm door," an elderly man confessed. Said it didn't match the community aesthetic. "I put that door on after my wife passed. It was her favorite color." A pattern emerged, selective enforcement. The board targeted veterans, new families, immigrants, anyone who didn't fit their mold of suburban conformity. Eva cataloged each case with the precision of a field officer mapping enemy behavior. But it wasn't just about compiling data.
It was about exposing it.
She planned a neighborhood meeting, off the record, no HOA oversight. She booked the local library's community room under a pseudonym, sent discreet invitations, and even asked a tech-savvy teen to help set up a digital presentation. 52 residents showed up. The room was silent when Eva stepped forward. No uniform, no rank, just calm authority. She didn't start with legal threats or emotional appeals. She started with facts. "Dennis Crowley pulled a gun on me," she said. "You all know that." Some looked away. Others nodded, ashamed they'd stayed silent. "What you may not know is that the board protected him, covered it up, and retaliated against my family using falsified reports and fabricated complaints. And they've done the same to many of you." She walked through the evidence like a prosecutor. Organized, irrefutable. The air in the room shifted. Neighbors murmured, then gasped. When she played the audio of a board member saying, "We'll bury them in red tape," someone actually stood up and yelled, "I knew it." By the end, no one was sitting on the fence anymore. Eva clicked to the final slide. It was a petition, official, notarized, and ready to go. It demanded a recall election to remove the current HOA board, freeze all pending fines, and appoint a third-party firm to audit HOA finances. The room erupted. People lined up to sign. Some brought others in from the hallway. Within 48 hours, over 70% of the community had endorsed it. The petition was legally binding under HOA rules. The board couldn't ignore it, but Dennis tried anyway. He sent out a mass email calling Eva a militant agitator and accusing her of sabotaging community values. It backfired. More signatures poured in. By the time Eva delivered the petition to the board office, with news crews waiting outside, there wasn't a single board member who didn't look like they'd swallowed a hand grenade. Dennis disappeared the next day. Literally vanished. His truck was gone. The house dark. Word was he'd moved in with family in another county until things cooled off. I doubted they ever would. Eva didn't celebrate. She didn't need to. She had one more card to play, and it was already in motion. 3 weeks after Eva submitted the petition, the board held an emergency election. It wasn't optional. Under the HOA's own bylaws, those same rules they'd weaponized against us, any petition with over 60% community backing required a vote of no confidence. Ours had over 70%. The board had no defense, no leverage, and no Dennis. They sent out last-minute notices, printed on thick cardstock, as if weight could mask desperation. The meeting was relocated to the Pine Hollow Recreation Center, where the folding chairs outnumbered their allies 10-1.
Eva didn't speak that night.
She didn't have to. Her name echoed in whispered conversations, in nods exchanged between strangers, in the subtle confidence of those who finally felt seen. Every neighbor who'd once stayed silent now carried the fire she'd lit. The election wasn't close. All 5 board members were voted out, unanimously. A temporary committee was appointed, and the first order of business was to suspend all pending fines and open a full audit into the previous board's financial records. That was where things got interesting. Turns out Dennis Crowley wasn't just a bully, he was a beneficiary. He'd been receiving under-the-table payments from a landscaping contractor hired by the HOA. Fake consulting fees, masked as reimbursement. Eva flagged every entry. Harper handed the findings to the DA.
The fallout was swift.
Within a month, Dennis was indicted for fraud and felony intimidation. The former HOA president was charged with misappropriation of funds. 2 other board members were subpoenaed for obstruction. Pine Hollow Estates, once a manicured maze of fear and passive compliance, became the scene of a full-blown reckoning. And through it all, Eva remained calm, steady,
focused.
I asked her one night, as we sat on the porch with quiet coffee and clearer skies, "Was this how you saw it ending?" She stared into the dark for a moment. Then, "No. But it's how it needed to end." There was something deeper in her voice. Not victory, responsibility.
"You didn't have to go that far," I said.
She looked at me, and I saw it again. That same glint from the day Dennis pulled the gun.
"He made it far," she said.
I just followed. 2 months later, the community held a barbecue in the Central Park. No board oversight, no forms to fill out, no citations for improper signage.
Just people.
Real neighbors. Someone brought a speaker. Kids ran wild with foam swords. And for the first time in years, the neighborhood didn't feel watched. It felt lived in. Eva was standing near the grill, talking with the elderly man who'd lost his wife, the one with the teal storm door. He was laughing, genuinely. A deep, healed kind of sound. The new board president approached us later, a younger woman named Mina with a background in nonprofit governance and exactly 0 interest in wielding power for sport. "We'd like Eva to join the board," she said. "Maybe even as chair." Eva smiled politely, shook her head. "I don't want to manage rules," she said. "I just want to live by them." Mina nodded, understanding. "Then, at least let us name the new neighborhood security committee after you." Eva raised an eyebrow. "The Delta Watch." Mina offered, grinning. We laughed. Eva, too. And just like that, it was over. A few days later, I found her in the garage, folding up her mission files into the military issue box where they came from. "You sure you want to put it all away?" I asked. She closed the lid, latched it. "Yeah," she said. "War's over." And it was. Dennis Crowley was awaiting trial. The corrupt board members were out. The neighborhood was healing. And Eva, the quiet storm they never saw coming, was finally just another neighbor again. Only now they all knew exactly who she was.